Welcome to our 2026 new Research Awardee webinar for the awards for two-year grants for the 26 to 28 period of our four-year omnibus. This is the second cycle of research competitions we've had in our four-year omnibus that began in 24. My name is Mia Zwolinski. I'm the Associate Director and Research Coordinator for Texas Sea Grant. Our other two speakers will be Chris Hale, our Associate Director and Extension Program Lead, and our Communications Manager, Megan Towery. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be made publicly available on our website following the webinar first next week, we hope, by then, if everything gets done. And we'll save our documents there. Save your questions if you can for after the Research Awardee information and the Texas Sea Grant Extension session. We'll have a Q&A session after that session. And just to ask a question, you can click on the chat tab and proceed by typing your question. We will also have a question at the end of the webinar to cover the publications and communication session. So I wanted to introduce you to our Texas Sea Grant Administration. We have Laura Pocariello, our Director for Texas Sea Grant. We have Chris Hale, our Extension Program Lead and Associate Director, and Megan Towery, our Communication Director. Okay. For any contacts that you need regarding your research project or research management contacts or me, and then also Joanna Russia, our program coordinator that had just joined us this summer, but she came in at the tail end of our biennial research competition, so she probably has had about 3 years of experience in 6 months. So we're glad that she's on board. And we have our new research awardees. 6 projects were recommended for funding, and we're hoping, as you saw with my last email, that we'll be getting a partial release of funding by the end of next month. We have Dr. Khalil of Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. His project is integrating economic, genetic, and risk insights to strengthen the Texas oyster aquaculture industry. His chosen Texas Sea Grant Extension partner is R.J. Shelley, who's out at another event. And I think Dr. Mario Marquez, our oyster specialist, I can't tell if he's on here or not. He may be. I just not able to identify by the name of the camera on that one. Our other internal researcher that was awarded this year is Dr. Kyle with Texas A&M AgriLife Research. So we've got 2 AgriLife projects. His project, his co-PI is attending today, Dan Pilgrim. His project is covering resiliency, coastal resiliency focus area, where he's going to be integrating geospatial and participatory approaches to enhance flood resilience through private land conservation in the Texas coastal prairie. So that's an interesting proposal that he had produced for us. Our third awardee is a former Texas Sea Grant funded researcher, Dr. Mergele, out of Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. Her focus area is also the resiliency of coastal communities and economies beyond the storm surge. Oh, and I'm going to back up for a moment because I just realized that our Texas Sea Grant extension partner for Dr. Kyle's project is here, Magellan Cleary. Then moving on to Dr. Mergele's project, where Magellan is also assisting as a partner along with R.J. Shelley. Dr. Mergele's project is beyond the storm surge, AI-driven predictions of groundwater influence coastal flooding on Texas's barrier islands. So that was an interesting concept of importance on how is groundwater impacting all of the issues we've had with coastal flooding. Our fifth awardee is Dr. Quigg out of Texas A&M University, Galveston, and her focus area that she was concentrating on is our healthy coastal ecosystems focus area, life in the PFAS lane, the impact of the I'll let you all pronounce that word, substances, PFAS, on coastal communities in Texas. And she's also a previously funded Texas Sea Grant researcher. And so this is an important topic and was one of our funding priorities. And that was just a great proposal that she's going to put forth with her work with our Texas Sea Grant Extension partner, Extension lead Chris Hale, and then again also our oyster specialist, Dr. Mario Marquez. And then lastly, Dr. Seaman from also from Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. Her focus area of also healthy coastal ecosystems and the impacts of PFAS again on the exposure on the spotted sea trout population. So she also has a little bit of a sustainable fisheries and aquaculture focus area element there. So this webinar will be covering basically the responsibilities and management for the success of your project over the life of your 2-year project. We'll be covering budget, expenses, and invoice processing. We will cover post-award revisions, and then some other sponsored research requirements that I need to point out to you. And then importantly, the integration of your research results with the Texas Sea Grant Extension, Education, and Outreach partners as outlined in your proposal's engagement plan. And that's what Chris Hale will be talking about after I get through talking for a little bit here on the management of the project. Then we'll be going into reporting requirements, why, what, when, and how. And that is going to be kind of a lengthy segment, and hopefully we can get through that without me accidentally swallowing air and starting to cough. But that's just a heads up, and we might want to take a little 5-minute break at that time because this is kind of a lengthy seminar. If not, just let us know what y'all's needs are. Y'all, you'd think I was from Texas. And then finally, our communications director, Megan Towery, will be discussing your responsibilities and requirements for reporting publications and communications results of your project. So first, going into budget, expenses, and invoice processing. I know you all have probably been funded on projects before, but just taking in the best practices and wise comments that can maybe help you a little bit further and gaining some clarity in this area. So we just want you to spend according to what you've outlined in your proposal scope of work, in your budget and budget justification. That seems kind of obvious, but that's then just the best practice to spend as you're doing your work, as your needs arise, and as you've outlined properly in that budget and budget justification in your proposal, as does timely expense processing. You want to have timely expense processing in alignment with the work you're doing on your project, that timeline. Very importantly, because of the terms and conditions of our Prime Omnibus Award, and actually the establishment of the National Sea Grant College Program in 1966 by Congress, they wanted the institutions that house the Sea Grant programs to have skin in the game of 50% of every $2 of the Fed funds that are being sent to us and that we are then federally flowing forward to you on your projects, a dollar of cost share must be reported at that time on the invoice. So your cost share accounts for reporting, just encourage your business administrators to begin working with your sponsored programs office project administrators and the Texas A&M sponsored research services project administrators to establish those cost share accounts so that everything can then just start moving along for you effectively and efficiently. So with that, on the invoice processing, the submission of your invoices or the expenses are going to be processed by Texas A&M's sponsored research services. That's our sponsored programs office. All of our awardees are within the A&M system, so you all are familiar. But for those who are not, or if we're funding you and you might have subawards on your projects, just giving that understanding for your co-PIs at those subrecipient institutions. So the point of contacts for the invoicing will be provided in your contractual agreements. An award contractual agreement would be provided to a PI who is external to the A&M system, or an award interest system letter of agreement will be drafted and provided to you for full execution if you're an API internal to the A&M system. So, we're within the A&M system, obviously, and so funding from one A&M system program to another department, we're not going to be invoicing each other. You're going to have an account that would be set up, but external system awardees would have that contractual agreement, and we need to have the same terms and conditions of our prime award passed down to you PIs and to your institution. So if it's not in that external award contractual agreement, it will be in this award interest system letter of agreement. It's going to be a Word doc created by SRS. So all invoices are required to include as the first page of your institution's invoice PDF, the Texas Sea Grant invoice summary cover sheet. And that is an Excel file that I created that looks like this. It summarizes your budget categories, what you're invoicing, and your cost share categories. We will provide that Excel file template for you with your agreement so that you can use that Excel spreadsheet for when you're doing your invoicing. It summarizes the details of the federal funds and the cost share funds at the time of invoicing. So as most of you, well, as some of you know, so the PIs that are at the Galveston and especially Corpus Christi, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, you will be getting a contractual agreement because of the nature of the way your institution is set up in the A&M system. But for those who are within the A&M system, like Dr. Khalil and Dr. Kyle's project, due to you utilizing funds from a sponsored project account, I would like for you to instead submit on a quarterly basis to me the Texas Sea Grant invoice summary report on a quarterly basis once the funds have been set up. So hopefully then by mid-May, then August, following the next quarters, November and January, send that via email to me so that I can understand how you're doing on your project. So that invoice summary cover sheet, it summarizes your original budget categories. You can adjust whatever your IDC rate is, and it will plug into the formulas there. Your current invoice billing, and then what you've spent since inception on the project, and then your balance remaining. So it's just a handy summary of those federal costs of your project. But similarly, we have the same thing for cost share. And actually, our sponsored programs office uses this information to load into our cost share system so that we can report back to our prime sponsor the cost share that's been reported on your project through the life of your project and by the end of your project. So again, you would have your cost share budget from your proposal loaded in here, and then whatever you're invoicing or reporting for that monthly or quarterly invoice or report, you should be reporting cost share at 50% of that amount in that current billing column. And then the cumulative, what you've reported on cost share since inception, and then the balance due. So post-award revisions, those kinds of things that come up during the life of your project that you may need assistance on for revising. So I first of all just say that post-award revision requests are not encouraged, but life happens and things happen, and you sometimes need to have a revision request processed. Those types could be a budget revision, or maybe a PI moves to another location and we have to switch around the PIs. Or you might need a no-cost extension for whatever reason. So we want you to submit that revision request for review and approval to me, copy your project administrator, and just know that I can review and approve these types of revision requests here at Texas Sea Grant at the state level without requiring pre-approval by NOAA, our sponsor, at the national level. So for most review requests, we can do that. I can review it and approve it on behalf of our director, Laura Picariello. And the review requests require a written justification for review and approval. And that's standard for all federal. So I'll be passing on those best practices to you there. So on the different types, on the budget revision example, perhaps you're realizing that you may need more analysis. So you might need to increase your budget category of consultant services or professional services to get those additional analysis done on your project. But the key on budget revisions is that your revised budget and your original budget of your total project needs to stay the same. So if you need to increase one budget category, then you need to look at your other budget categories and offset it with a decrease in that category that you will not need any longer. So you really have to think that through, and where you're actually kind of giving up some budget to put in a more important budget need at that time. Principal investigator change example, if a PI moves to a new institution, we literally on our awards that we awarded in 2024, the lead PI moved from Rice University to the University of California at Berkeley. And so her co-PI, who was at University of Texas, Arlington, they just switched roles. And so then we have to just do that kind of paperwork process. But I can work on that here at the state level without it going for pre-approval by our sponsor. And then a no-cost extension, which we, in a perfect world, wouldn't want to have or need to have, but things happen. You might have some sort of scope of work delay where you might need to extend for time, and that may or may not come with a budget revision request. So it just depends on what's happening on your project. For example, a hurricane prevented your ability to perform your fieldwork sampling. You're going to have to move that timeline out on that example. So how to request that budget revision or no cost extension. So what I would need for you to do is submit the following. This is the best practices. I would need to see what your budget summary is at the time of this budget request, your original budget, what you've spent so far, cumulative spending, your balance remaining. And you could just take, again, that Texas Sea Grant invoice summary sheet and update it for that current budget revision period. And that would be a simple worksheet you could do there to give me your current balances for that budget revision. Then your justification summary, I would need you to briefly, and it doesn't have to be a long 1 or 2 page Word doc. It could be a couple of paragraphs. An email is fine, but briefly and clearly state your purpose and need for the budget revision or extension. If it's for an extension for time, justify that purpose. State what work remains, what occurred, and what you still need to do that extension will make it successful for you. So also, please provide that new proposed extension date, and then a new timeline. And then importantly, let me know if your scope of work will or will not change. I need you to confirm that for me so I'll know if it's not changing, great, checking that off. But if you're actually having to change your entire scope of work or a portion of it, that's that's significant, that does require sponsor pre-approval. So that will help me know, how long this might take to get this done for you. So just, with all of this, just help me understand the whys so I have a better understanding of your needs. Submit all of this to me, and of course, copy your project administrator. And then just moving into some other sponsored research requirements that I need to let you be aware of. We had a specific award condition placed on our most recent funding for last year. It occurred for February of 2025 effective. So you're going back to the very beginning here. This NOAA emblem and the Sea Grant logo is now trademarked. And so those trademark responsibilities have been given to us in a special award condition that we then have to pass on to you. So NOAA holds that federal trademark registration for the NOAA emblem. It asserts common law trademark rights and the Sea Grant logo here. The recipient, you and any of your subrecipients on your award, you're allowed to use the NOAA emblem and Sea Grant logo pursuant to the following terms. The recipient shall ensure that the NOAA emblem and Sea Grant logo are placed on all print and digital media produced by the recipient and subrecipients under this award due to being funded by Sea Grant and NOAA, including but not limited to scientific posters and presentations. We've got a link that on our reporting webpage that gives you options of the different logos that you can use or your students can use on their presentations. This also might include conference agendas, documents, and program websites. That's our website. This logo placement is in addition to the acknowledgement of sponsorship statement that's required for publications and videos by the Department of Commerce standard terms and conditions. And our communications director will let you know. We've got the exact text that you can just copy and paste and put in your documents that acknowledges that your project, the results that you're delivering in that publication or whatever was funded partly or wholly by NOAA and the Sea Grant program in the award number. So the use of the NOAA emblem and the Sea Grant logo shall be in compliance with style guidance and standards specific at the Sea Grant NOAA website. So I've given you that link. You can browse that when you get to that point, probably in another year. Be aware of that before you start doing those kinds of publications and documents. The recipient may not use the NOAA emblem or Sea Grant logo for other purposes, including lobbying, issue advocacy, endorsing a product or organization, or communications to elected officials or federal agencies. That's kind of obvious, but just got to state that sponsored research requirement to you. And then lastly, another sponsored research requirement that I wanted to point out to you is a system, Texas A&M University system memorandum that came out in 2015. The purpose was to enhance transparency of research communications. So Texas House of Representatives bill and the Texas Education Code requires conspicuous disclosure of the identity of each sponsor of the research in any public communication of the data generated in the performance of sponsored research. We have that document on our award reporting webpage. And then NOAA has its own data sharing directive that ensures that environmental data produced as a result of NOAA-funded grants and thereby subrecipients are made publicly accessible in a timely fashion, typically within 2 years. And final manuscripts, peer-reviewed publications are deposited at the NOAA National Sea Grant Central Library, and we have that document that's pretty lengthy, but that document's also on our reporting webpage. And then the Sea Grant College program has its Sea Grant Data Management Plan template. You're familiar with that because you completed that at the proposal award phase for us, where you're telling us where your data is going to be housed and then and how it can be shared and contact information. And once your project completes, expires and completes, we'll send you that template again, along with what you submitted previously, so that you can update the project completion phase of that. And so just summarizing for you, the overarching goals of Texas Sea Grant's research program is to support community engaged and outcome-oriented research that spans the broad areas of natural, physical, social, behavioral, economic sciences, and engineering, and to make research investments. We're investing in you that will generate substantial social, economic, and environmental long-term impacts in Texas. So our investment for this round of biennial research competitions is nearly $2 million over 2 years, not quite $1 million per each of your grant years. And so it's important that we want you to be successful in your research project so that we can have those long-term impacts in Texas and for Texans. So the research and extension integration is required, and this is a great chart of that involvement with the community from research and the information that comes from that and the extension education and outreach that comes about with extension. That's required as part of your funding from Texas Sea Grant. So remember to maintain that engagement plan throughout your project. And you'll remember too that from the RFP that you responded to, you had stated in your proposal how you would integrate your research results with the broader impacts of extension education and outreach with the Texas Sea Grant extension partner that you chose and worked with on your proposals. So throughout the life of the project, you would want to incorporate and work that engagement plan with your Texas Sea Grant extension partner and other collaborators of your proposal. And with that, I'm going to turn over the discussion to Chris Hale, our Extension Program Leader and Associate Director. And here you go, Chris.
Thanks, Mia. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris. Only a couple slides here, but I wanted to take the opportunity since we're all gathered here today to revisit and re-emphasize some of these basic concepts related to extension. If you joined us, and I hope you did, if you joined us during the proposal stage, some of these slides will look familiar. But it's been a while since we connected. And by the way, congratulations to all of you for making it to this stage and getting awarded. So I'm really excited to see what you guys can do. So with that, what does extension mean? So in its simplest definition, we have here that extension is sustained interaction with specific audiences using techniques to transfer science-based information or skills that inform decision making and or change behavior. Extension is achieved through outreach and engagement throughout your entire project. Now, I would have highlighted all of the words in this if I if I thought that would help, but really I want to at least focus on that sustained interaction part and the throughout your entire project part. That's really key to successful extension. Next slide, please. And so more specifically, um, generally speaking, I should say, outreach and engagement is how we do science extension. So outreach can be understood as opportunities to build awareness, develop relationships, inspire action. It's typically seen as a one-way delivery of information to enhance awareness of science and research. And engagement then is a two-way relationship between organizations, institutions of higher education, and communities for the mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources within a context of partnership and reciprocity. And then, of course, all of this is involving the end users and stakeholders, and how you define that in your projects might vary. But basically, these are people who need or will use the results of your science and research, and they'll be engaged in your proposal development and throughout your entire project. So extension means involvement. It means there's continual give and take of information and action, and everyone engaged clearly understands their role and what is expected of them. So this means you need to contact the people you want to engage with early on. And these are the people who are going to ultimately influence your project and influence those outcomes. They can also be people who are likely to be impacted in various ways, not only by your work, but by the issues that your work is addressing. So they'll likely have a lot to contribute to your projects, given that they are invited to the table. And so this is one area where Texas Sea Grant can help you with your projects. Next slide, please. So all of the details regarding the integration of research and extension should have been laid out rather clearly in your proposal's engagement plan. And of course, all engagement plans will look different depending on your specific projects. But I encourage you to revisit that plan. What did you say you're going to do? Is it still feasible and potentially impactful? And importantly, reach out to that Texas Sea Grant Extension team member that you included in your proposal, which Mia shared with us at the beginning of this webinar. Talk through the plan with your Texas Sea Grant point of contact and come to an agreement on your next steps together. And remember, there is a sort of spectrum of engagement here. Each Sea Grant agent and specialist has varying levels of capacity, time, and effort to contribute to your project. So it's important that you talk with them to explore how best to support each other. And the same goes for the community members that you intend to get involved with for your project. They had different abilities, capacities. So again, contact your Sea Grant Extension partner sooner rather than later and keep them engaged throughout the entire cycle of your projects. Basically help them help you. So I've listed a couple of ideas here in general of ways our staff have gotten involved in research projects over the years. It's certainly not limited to this, but for example, your extension partners can advise or support in how you conduct your outreach and education or engagement activities. They can connect you with stakeholders. They can participate as an advisory panelist or in a committee. they can contribute directly to creating or co-creating those products and tools. They will definitely help you work with your Texas Secret Communications team, who you're going to hear from in a little bit, to share project progress updates through our various channels. They can identify ongoing outreach and engagement opportunities that are happening locally in the places that you intend to do your research. So they're very plugged in with what's going on in their local communities. And in general, they can support fieldwork. Most of our extension staff, if not all of them, have a background in science and at some point in their careers were or are still very involved in scientific data collection and also are very connected with other partners and communities who also are connecting information or collecting information and data. And they can help you do that or simply share results. Also consider them for co-authoring papers and other types of publications you might be planning. So just some basic ideas there. Again, I just want to encourage you to start that conversation, initiate those connections with our staff as soon as possible. If you have any questions about what this means, or perhaps you missed the original presentation about integration of research and extension last year, reach out to me and I can walk you through that. And of course, we'll take some questions at the end of this meeting. Thanks, Mia.
So, any questions at this point on the research management or the extension session? You can.
Hello there. I do have a quick question, Yuri.
Sure, sure. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing? Uh,
Great.
well, my question is, for example, for us, we use SRS and we do some reports through SRS. For example, in some grants, I provide the report, but not financial report, but I report everything like financially to SRS. And also we have the accounts on SRS and everything. In this particular grant, besides provide the numbers and everything for SRS, I need to send an email direct to you. I'm just making sure with that spreadsheet that you show us, right?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
Yeah,
We do everything with SRS as they require, but also we send to you an email, right? To keep like updating.
right, right.
Correct. Just making sure.
Yes, and thank you. Yeah, our uh, project administrator for Texas Sea Grant, Katie McDowell is actually on here as well, and if she wants to, she can uh, speak. But yes, all of our projects that we are funding new are federal flow-through dollars from our prime omnibus award from NOAA. So there's an umbrella award that Katie has to manage. And then all of our projects that the 6 projects we funded in 24 are support accounts or sub-ledger accounts. And then once we get the funds for your 5 projects for 26, SRS will be adding those accounts and setup and contractual agreements and whatnot. And um, I have found that in reviewing invoices, I created that invoice summary template for myself because it gave such a great just summary snapshot of your project, your financial position. But more importantly, I found out from our SRS project administrator and another colleague who was at our uh, at the Division of Research had mentioned that they take that invoice summary cover sheet where it summarizes the cost share that's been reported. That's what is then loaded and input into Maestro for our project number because your cost share fulfills our cost share requirement to our prime sponsor on our federal award.
I see.
So you're helping us out. Do what you need to do as you typically do, and then also do this additional one for me on a quarterly basis if you're not invoicing. Yeah, Laura, the director has a question.
Not a question, just a statement for everybody. I just to reiterate, as Mia was saying, this is part of our larger federal award, and you all are the second half of that. As she said, there's two awards. There's the first 2-year cycle, the second 2-year cycle. And so this is key and really, really important for you to be providing that information to us with respect to that cost share, particularly on a quarterly basis, because as you are closing out your awards, we're having to close out a very large federal award. And if you are behind on cost share or there are issues and complications there, then it makes it incredibly difficult for us to close out the award on our end, which happens to line up exactly because of the timing of the cycle. So I just wanted to reiterate from my end, ask you all a personal, please help me, help the rest of us on the team to make sure that we're tracking that information really well so that we can close out across the board and that we're not chasing people in those last, 90 days of closeout of award to try to make sure we met cost share and those types of complications. So that's why we asked that extra effort, because it all ties in so closely to our very complex federal awards. So just want to say I know that that's extra effort. I particularly hate having to do extra effort on my awards as well. Extra reporting is complex and frustrating. But we really appreciate your help in making that happen for us. And just wanted to give that perspective. So thanks.
That's excellent. And so again, the cost share reporting is required when your Fed funds are spent. And so the easiest way to do that is through your invoicing. And if you're not invoicing because you're an internally funded researcher, then that report needs to be sent to me at least on a quarterly basis. Hi, Katie.
Hi, I just wanted to say hello to everybody. I am the SRS project administrator for Sea Grant. That cost sharing, whenever I get the invoice in AggieBuy, I then send it to our cost share specialist so that she can make sure to update it on her end as well. It's a very collaborative thing that we have multiple people keeping track of that cost share. So it's really important to report that. That way everybody has the right numbers on their books. I think I've interacted with the majority of the folks in here, but if you guys have any questions about, post-award, extensions, budgets, anything like that, feel free to email me. My email is literally my first name dot last name at tamu.edu. So feel free to reach out and let me know if you have any questions or any concerns, and I'll be happy to help where I can.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, and even Yuri, as you mentioned, I mean, really SRS, they're invaluable to us. So we all work together as a team. So let's get back onto the next section. Which is reporting. And again, if you need to, so it's 10 to 11. So if we need to take a break, let me know at 11:15 or something, or we'll just keep going. So why do we report? Well, it's a sponsor requirement. What do we report? It's a various and sundry metrics, performance measures, of course, publications, and that is all dictated to us by how our sponsor needs it. So we will cover some of what these are for you, and so that's the why we do it. What are we reporting? When we report on an annual basis by mid-February, and publications should be submitted to us as they're produced throughout the year. How? We are reporting using an online system called Airtable. Airtable's online research data collection form. So going into the whys, principal investigators receiving funding from Texas Sea Grant are required to report the project progress. How are you doing every year? So that's the main focus, is we want to see what that progress is. And then also publications as you get to that point in your project scope of work. And it's important for that to occur so that Texas Sea Grant can report in our annual report to our National Sea Grant Office at the 1st of June of every year, and then also to our prime sponsor, NOAA. So the reporting data allows the measuring of Texas Sea Grant's funded research outcomes to the programs, to the Texas Sea Grant programs, strategic plan stated goals. So as you recollect from preparing your letter of intent and your full proposal, we asked you to tell us of the funding priority that you selected, which Texas Sea Grant strategic plan goal will your project then achieve as an outcome and a success? So with that reporting, when you do report, we want you to be thorough, yet brief, succinct, and high-level responses. Just remember that. We don't need dissertations because we have to summarize it in our report. And so we'll give you specific guidance on how we need you to draft your responses, which may seem like a pain, but us giving you the specific guidance on how to draft those brief, succinct, high-level responses then reduces the need of sending it back to you and getting you to clarify or write it the way it needs to be done. So we have guidance that we've recently updated for this year's 25 annual reporting that period that we're in right now for our current and existing funded research projects. Yours won't begin until next January, February. But so the guidance I have on our research award reporting webpage, and it's the Texas Sea Grant Research Reporting Data Collection Airtable Guidance as of last month of this year. So what do we report? So some of the things that we want to give you an understanding for how you can report your progress on your project. We report metrics, performance measures, and progress statements. These are defined and set by the National Sea Grant Office. The period of reporting is on an annual basis until your project is final, and then you have your final report. But so the reporting follows the performance period of February to January. So for you, your period of reporting will be as of February 1, even though we haven't been funded yet. It's still, as I said in my prior email, that February 1 start date is honored, and that's how we report from. So from February through next January at the end of the month is that annual reporting period. So a summary of the sections that we report on, I have listed here. Metrics could be a variety of things, your number of presentations. You might have citizen scientists on your proposals, so you may have volunteer hours or the number of volunteers and other public engagement quantities, numbers. Under performance measures, that could include economic benefits or community engagement. We have statements that we ask you to draft specifically, and that's an annual highlight statement. What's the best thing that happened this reporting period year? That annual highlight. And we also require a project update statement. What did you do this last year? And then a final accomplishment statement once your project expires. That accomplishment statement is written in place of the annual highlight. We also ask for you to report on leveraged funding that you may have received, and I'll explain more of that. There are various NOAA progress questions that are on NOAA's federal reporting progress report, and so they're excellent questions that really helps us gauge what's going on. So we used those same questions in our reporting online form for you to complete for us. Your students that you've supported on your project, which ones are new for that period? And then the following year, which ones are continuing? And then eventually, once they graduate, if they attain a job or move into an advanced degree program, that's a performance measure we need you to report on for us. Your partners that you listed in your proposal, we want you to tell us which of those partners you engaged with during this reporting period. And then publications. and other publication types like conference abstracts or student thesis or dissertations. So here's some areas of metrics of what we report on, and just throughout the life of your project, just keep track. Every month as you're going through different activities that occurs on your project that relates to these areas, just keep track of these activities so you can then report on them in February. So you might have meetings, workshops, or conferences. We need to get the quantity, the number of meetings, workshops, conferences that were organized by Texas Sea Grant funded researchers and students. And then the number of attendees at those same kinds of meetings. You will eventually have public or professional presentations. So we need to get that quantity, that number of public or professional presentations given by funded Texas Sea Grant researchers and students, and then the attendees at those public or professional presentations. You might have organized volunteers, citizen scientists. And if you do have those on your projects, we need to know the quantity, the number of those volunteers, and then the total number of hours that those volunteers put in for that activity. And then different educational engagements, the total number of students of preschool through 12th grade who participated in activities that were organized by or presented at a funded Texas Sea Grant or by a funded Texas Sea Grant researcher and their student. So not only the total number of the students that participated in that activity, but also the total number of the educators who participated in that activity. So that just gives you some examples, some ideas, and these may not even apply to your project. So you report as it applies to your project. But we have to show everything in our reporting system, and you just select which one to report on. So continuing with the reporting requirements of what we report, here's some examples of performance measures. Again, keep track throughout the year as your activities occur. Economic impacts that might be resulting from your work on your project. If you do have that, we need you to justify and give us the specifics, what happened, what quantifying the dollars that the impact was, what was the benefit. So a justification goes along with that. Here's the annual highlight or the final accomplishment statement. Influence funds that you may have received as a result of being funded by Texas Sea Grant, that's leverage funding. The NOAA progress questions. Some other areas, environmental literacy and workforce development products. If you have any of those, we would need you to provide the link to that product and then cite when and who used that product. The national office needs to understand that. If you've had any resource managers that were engaged as a result of the work on your project, we would need to report that. Sustainability development that might occur as a result of the work on your project, that too requires a justification. Tools, technology, and information system products that are used to enhance ecosystem-based management. If you have any products resulting in that, we would also need you to provide that link to the product and cite who and when that product was used. Your project partners that were engaged during the current reporting period. Your project update, what did you do for that annual reporting period? Again, brief and succinct. And then your supported students, whether or not they attained a job or an advanced degree once they graduated. So those are some examples of measures of performance that the national office wants us to justify to them due to them funding us, and as well as Congress wanting to understand that as Congress funds NOAA and the Sea Grant program. Continuing with reporting of what we report, Publications. So I'm just going to give you a high level summary here because our communications director will discuss the details later in the webinar. But all publications produced based on Texas Sea Grant funded research must be reported and submitted to the National Sea Grant Library for our annual report. So we've got examples of you would have eventually peer-reviewed journal articles, and then there are other publication types. These are not to be reported once a year in February. They are required to be reported throughout the year as soon as they're produced so that we can submit to our library, the National Sea Grant Library, throughout the year. Publication of research results in peer-reviewed journals and presentations at professional conferences are important metrics for evaluating the research program. So we would want you to upload into the Airtable system the publisher's version, if it's an open access, and provide that open access link. If it's not open access, we would need you to upload the author's accepted version. The National Sea Grant Library needs to have where the ownership still rests with the author. So we ask for the accepted version of the peer-reviewed journal publication when it's received back from the publisher and the review team. So upload that version, not the publisher's version, and provide a link. If for whatever reason the publisher never returns that accepted version back to you, as a last resort, we can use the final accepted version that you sent to the publisher. So also upload into Airtable other publication types, such as the conference abstract that you prepared to be able to present at a conference, or student theses, dissertations. Those are other publication types that we need you to submit to us throughout the year. So what and how do we report? So there's the guidance again, that's the PDF. And I want you to understand that the narrative writing requirements is for NOAA's reporting. All narrative sections contribute to NOAA's national reporting. The annual highlight statement, your annual project update, and that final accomplishment statement that you write at the end of your project. They all must be written in a third person and clearly attribute work to Texas Sea Grant. So we ask you to be cognizant and aware of that. That's in our guidelines, and it's also repeated guidelines to remind you as you're reporting in Airtable. So we have here that the National Sea Grant Office requires for you to begin your narrative comment with one of the following prefixes just to ensure consistent attribution. So the Texas Sea Grant attribution prefix options could be, and so it's always Texas Sea Grant, the Texas Sea Grant researcher achieved, or the Texas Sea Grant research team accomplished, or the Texas Sea Grant research project delivered results of. So we need that consistency, please. So again, with the what and how on the annual highlight statements or that final accomplishment statement, to give you a little more detail, that highlight statement, again, is brief, succinct, high-level narrative describing the resulting highlight of that year-long research effort. So not just what you did, but what was a highlight that you can brag about of what occurred during that last year for that reporting period. And then your final accomplishment statement, written at the end of the project instead of the annual highlight. Again, brief, succinct, high-level narrative describing the most significant project accomplishment that has a measurable and significant economic, societal, and/or environmental benefit. That's where you want to brag about what you accomplished on your project. So both the highlight and the final accomplishment statements are required to be written utilizing what we call the 4 R's. And it has to adhere to a word and character count and include that Texas Sea Grant attribution prefix. So the next slide will give you some helpful tips on the 4 R's. So for example, an annual project highlight or a final accomplishment statement, how to do it. So the 4 R's is the relevance, response, results, and then your recap. It starts with the title, like a newspaper headline. This is not the title to your project. You're wanting to draft a highlight or that final accomplishment with a title, like a newspaper headline, present tense, use that Texas Sea Grant attribution prefix, and pay attention to the limitation of characters on that. So once you have your title, go into writing your draft, employing the 4 R's. Relevance, why statement. So the why, what, the outcome. So on relevance, the why. Why did you do this research? Why should this be considered important to others? Take it from the relevant statement that you wrote in your proposal. If you remember your letter of intent, we asked you to provide the objectives, the relevance, the methodology, and your educational outreach plan. So you don't need to start from scratch. So look at what you'd written previously, and then what activity during that year for that highlight statement, or especially for that final accomplishment statement, describe why you did what you did. What was the relevance? So then what was your response? The what statement. What research did you do in response to the need outlined in your relevance statement? Results, your outcome statement, the results and how the world has subsequently changed. And then a recap is your summary. Repeat your title. Repeat that title with the Texas Sea Grant attribution prefix, and then add your results summary statement. All of these have to have 75 words or less for each section. And as you draft your section, they're in text boxes for each of these 4. Once you enter that into Airtable, if you've exceeded the count, Airtable will prompt you to revise. So to give you an example, and this was a great example of a sample final accomplishment statement of a research project. His title, there's his attribution statement. Texas Sea Grant Research did what? It supports citizen science-driven flood resiliency. So the relevance is here, the response, the result, and the recap. The relevance. What happened? Why did he do what he did? This project, supporting citizen science for driven flood resiliency, the relevance was for the ability to automatically and accurately estimate floodwater depth at street level. This was developed after Hurricane Harvey. And it added significant value to long-term flood risk mapping, as well as search and rescue operations immediately following a flood event. So the response, what did they do? Texas Sea Grant Project developed an app tool. There's that technology tool we want you to report on. A BluePix web app tool, a web app for crowdsourced flood photo collection. That application populated nearly 200 pictures of stop signs in various locations, both before and after a flood event. And so they were able to compare simply the pole length of the stop sign before and after a flood to provide more context in the depth of flood water that occurred in a particular location. So the result, the outcome, the app allowed citizen scientists to create accounts. They uploaded pre and post flood photos. They pinned them on a map interface. The photos are being used to train and test AI. In fact, that PI has had some articles in the paper I've noticed where he's carrying it even further. So they were using to test AI model to automatically calculate the depth of floodwater at the location of the photo. So the recap to this accomplishment statement, he repeated his title, Texas Sea Grant Research Supports Citizen-Driven Flood Resiliency. By what? What's the outcome? By creating an application to warn citizens of potential flooding risks, thereby mitigating risk. So this was, I thought was just a great example. It was a really interesting project, as I hope that y'all will be accomplishing the same or even more with your projects and the importance of what you're working on. So going into another area of what we report on is leverage funding. Again, as you receive funding externally, track it as you receive it, but you just report it annually in February. So leverage funds are any funds that researchers receive beyond Texas Sea Grant's original prime award. These influenced funds are reported as contributing towards accomplishing Texas Sea Grant strategic plan goals and objectives. So our funding you, that leverage funding is influenced by Texas Sea Grant, but it's administered by your institution where you receive that funding. So for example, if a Texas Sea Grant funded project, that PI ended up getting, as a result, a funded grant from the National Science Foundation, that NSF funded grant would be considered influenced leveraged funds, and we need you to report that. So if you use your Sea Grant funded research project to leverage funds from other sources, report as follows. What's that project title? What was the total funding amount? That start date, that end date, and then the sponsor. And then we'll need you to figure out of that total amount that you received in funding, what's the monthly amount? Because depending on when your start date is and the end date, where does that fall in between our reporting period of February to January? We can only count those months. So that incremental amount would be what your leverage funds would be that you would report to us for that year that you first report your leverage funds. You will not have to report that again. We will take care of extending it out into the next year. So you would just on the next year's annual report, if you got new leverage funds, then you would report that, but you just report it once. And then continuing with the what of what we report are your partners. Which of your partners that were on your proposal did you engage with during this reported period? So we will ask you to report that annually, because as we input our data from you and compile it into our annual report to our national office into their reporting system, we have to tag that partner with that activity in your project. So we'll be having you do this update of whom you engaged with during the reporting period every reporting year. So when do we report? Texas Sea Grant reports on an annual basis, but also progressively throughout the year in submitting publications to the National Sea Grant Library. So the reports are due annually by mid-February, and publications are submitted and produced throughout the year. The annual report period, as I've mentioned previously, it follows your award period of performance from February to January. So for your reporting year, you'll begin reporting next January, due February of 27. I can't believe it, but this is your reporting period. And that's done annually until your project expires. So once your project expires, instead of reporting your annual report on February 15th, we give you 30 days after the project expires, which is really only just tagging on a couple of more weeks. So the end of February are when your final reports are due. Final reports, though, are reported on an annual basis. It's not accumulation of your data. You already reported previously in prior annual reports. So it's not necessary for you to provide any cumulative data. It's still on an annual basis. But some of the other items, like the NOAA progress questions, we would want you to respond, of course, on a final basis of how your project did. And of course, instead of an annual highlight statement, you'll have instead the final accomplishment statement is prepared. So how do you do this? Well, we have resources available to assist you with reporting. Firstly, I want you to review the guidance, and this is I'll send that out to you all, but it's also posted to our webpage with the guidance, the Texas Sea Grant Research Reporting Data Collection Airtable Guidance. The reporting method is through the Airtable online reporting data collection system. So how to create a new report record. Well, you will receive an email invitation from the Airtable system, but we won't send that out to you till next month, so don't worry about it right now. But so when you do get that email invitation from Airtable to set up your account next month, firstly, take that Airtable email address and put it in your safe contact list so that when you do your reporting, any automated reports from Airtable confirming your report submission will not go to your junk folder. So put that Airtable email address in your safe contact list once we get that out to you next month. Be sure to save your password. Reporting for the 26th annual report will not begin until next January for the February 15th due date. And you'll need to log in again at that time before you begin a new report record for the 26th annual report. So the way you do that is by accessing this link. And that link is literally the research reporting data collection form in Airtable, and that's how you begin your annual report. Please visit our Texas Sea Grant Award reporting website to find reporting guidance, that same reporting guidance. And it summarizes some of what we've covered here. And it also has the National Sea Grant Office's guidance and definitions document, which is here. So let me see if I can show you right quick. So here is our award reporting webpage. The link takes you and it gives you everything. Here's our webinar from 2 years ago. The NOAA data sharing directive I talked to you about, the disclosure of sponsors, that document that I had talked about previously, basic reporting information, more detailed reporting information. So all of this information is here for you, your understanding and review. And then just some reminders. Review the guidance, especially the first few pages where I've explained what I've already explained here on the importance of all of your narratives that you draft and statements for us are important to be done a certain way so that the national office and NOAA can report back to Congress more easily. Use that Airtable online system link to create a new report. And also, if you run out of time and you just need to submit a few sections at a time, then click on that link again to submit additional new data for the same report year. So as you get into Airtable, it will show sections. On all those sections I've gone over with you, the metrics, different performance measures, supported students, publications. So you will literally select each section that applies to your project that you will report on. Airtable will step you through all the questions. It has guidance from the National Sea Grant Office on what to report and examples of what not to report. So once you're in there, it may seem overwhelming because there's so much text there, but it's helpful guidance for you to know what is a good example of what to report and what not to report. Should you need additional time to submit, simply unselect the section that you have not been able to complete and submit what you have completed. And Airtable will send a response email confirmation of that submission. Then when you're ready to complete more sections, click on that same form link again, complete those additional sections for the same report year. Follow through the form as you select them. Please answer all questions. They all require a response if you've selected it. If the question's not applicable to your project, then don't select it. But parts of it, you may have to put in an answer if it doesn't apply, NA or enter 0 if it's a numeric response requirement. But if you didn't select it, that might not apply. You might not need to worry about that. So to give you an idea of what it looks like, so when you click on that form link, this is your landing page. And again, at the very start, so it's going to show you, so you can see now the screenshot I took because we're in our current 25 annual report year. Once you click on it in next January, this will have changed to February of 26 to January of 27. And right at the top, here's that guidance of what I'm wanting you to review. And then our National Sea Grant guidance is there. And then these are these sections that you would be completing, and select each one as you're able to, and just complete what you can, submit, come back, click on the form link again to come back and complete your other sections. And it will walk you through the process. There are some sections where if you have to report multiple entries, like for example, student supported, you would have to submit multiple times, but the system, this data system has a limitation of only one record is allowed to report for one submission. So if you have multiple records, like multiple students that are on your report, when you're trying to fill in their name, what they're studying, what their current degree is, whether they're new, continuing, or have just graduated, whatever, you would have to click on the form again to click on and select student supported and report on that next student. So that's just the way the system is. So I haven't left any time for the rest of the webinar. No, it's not that bad. It's 11:20. But any reporting questions at this point, just email me, and I can always help you individually at that way, or if you want to, click on the chat and type your questions. Otherwise, do we want to take a 2-minute break, or do we want to go right into publications? I'll just start the slide. And it looks like I've got, oh, so Dr. Seaman actually said that something was very clear that I presented. Well, that's good, because that makes me feel better, as we're all human and we all kind of wonder. And Katie has, please triple check the math on the budget revision, as that makes it easier for sponsor approval and for her to input that into FAMUS, into the Financial Accounting and Management Information System, FAMUS. Yes, so just by the way, that invoice summary cover sheet, I have edited it to also be, I have another version for whenever you may need to do a budget revision. So I'll help you with that as well. Send that to you as needed. Okay. Amazingly enough, I didn't accidentally swallow any air and start coughing, so that's a success. So I'm going to start the slide for Megan Towery, our communication director. And there she is. So I'm going to mute my.
Okay, quick audio check. Can everyone hear me? We're good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Well, hi. Thank you for the introduction, Mia. I am the communications director, and I'm just going to give everybody a second to breathe. This is a lot of information, and we appreciate you staying on this long. I will try not to keep us too long and be brief. But we are just going to go into a little bit of detail about what is considered a publication, when we receive them, and some of the criteria surrounding how we have to submit them to the NOAA library. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you. As Mia mentioned, and Chris, as a publicly funded organization, we are required to document our impacts and accomplishments, not just to share your great work, but to also, share it with the communities, kind of show the impact of what we are doing with that research. And that includes any type of publication that results of that research. It is a policy requirement from NOAA. I believe that's on the next page, so I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, so there is some repository document guidance on this page, but here's the criteria for what is considered a publication by NOAA, and what needs to go through there. So it needs to be sponsored entirely or in part by one or more Sea Grant programs. It needs to communicate the results of research. It is intended for public dissemination and consumption, and it is in an acceptable format. Next page. So that link on the last slide, just save it for your reference. It is a very detailed explanation of what we are about to get into. It has a really great consolidated list of the types of publications and when to submit and when not to submit, and what should be peer reviewed and what is non-peer reviewed. But I'm going to cover some of the most popular ones: technical reports, conference abstracts, peer-reviewed journals. That's the big obvious one. But newsletters that you would send out from your research or program, any type of website or digital software or database would be considered a publication. Theses and dissertations from your students or student researchers, graduate student researchers that you helped with or supported. And then, published webinars, as long as they're educational in format. That is the rule of thumb. All of these things, when submitted to the NOAA library, have to be 508 compliant. We can help with this for the non-peer reviewed items. What it has to do with is just accessibility and making sure that screen readers can read it for disabled people. But for peer reviewed, NOAA actually handles this for us when we submit it to the library. So don't focus too heavily on that. We'll get it covered whenever you submit it, but it's just a note that it is something that we do have to do. Next. Okay, so just getting in a little detail about the accepted manuscript versus an open access. So whenever you submit to a peer-reviewed journal and it is classified as open access, meaning it's publicly available without a payment of any form, we can accept that as the version that goes to the library. If it is not open access, we do need that version that Mia mentioned, that is the pre-published accepted version, because you still own it before it gets to that publisher, and they need to see the edits that you made on that pre-published document. So that's what the accepted manuscript is. There's a nice little visual that shows you the editing process, and before it's accepted, that would be the copy. So whatever you submitted to a non-open access journal would be what we would take if we did not have an open access link. But the open access link is, of course, the easier one and most common. Again, don't worry about 508 compliance. The NOAA library will take care of that once we submit it. And then at the bottom of this page, there is a link about what an accepted manuscript is and the format that it needs to come in. So you might want to save that one for your records as well. Next. Okay, so there are a couple of things not considered a publication, and that comprehensive list goes through these in more detail, but here's some of the ones that we get a lot of questions on. So poster presentations, so the actual physical poster would be considered a publication, but a presentation about said poster would not be. Then event flyers, so if you're just hosting kind of a committee event or a survey type of event, the flyer marketing that event would be considered promotional and it's not considered a publication. But then PowerPoint slides, that depending on the nature of the PowerPoints, It depends. If it's a webinar style and it's meant to be educational, we do submit it and see if they will accept it. If it's just a generic PowerPoint, we typically wouldn't. But in doubt, feel free to ask. You can email our communications team directly. You can email me and Joanna, or you can just send a message to cgrant@tmu.edu and we will let you know. All publications produced with our funding do have to require this acknowledgement statement. This is very common, of course, on grant work. So just make sure this is included before you submit it, whenever, especially when it's peer reviewed. Okay, so publication numbers. This is a numerical system that we use to categorize our types of publications. Once you submit it through our form and Airtable that Mia mentioned, our team will handle identifying the type of publication by this number. It comes in this format, which is TMU SG year and the numerical series. We can share that back with you if you would like to use this citation from the NOAA library for your CV or your work in any case, or you can use the peer review journal and it does not need to be included. But feel free to ask if you would like to get the full citation after we submit. And then again, Mia mentioned our logos. So here is a link. There's a link for the different variations of our logos. So we have a couple of options like black, white, depending on color, if you're going on a poster. So just make sure to check that link or look at the award reporting page to get access to those logos. And then if you need it in a format that is not supplied, then we can always provide one to you. Next. Okay, so I know a lot of dates have been thrown at you, so I'm not going to add to that today. But the main thing to remember is that as soon as a publication is created, try to remember to submit it. We can accept it up to a year after the published date of that publication. But if you just kind of put it in your head, like, oh, this was a NOAA funded project, Sea Grant is expecting me to send this, and then doing as soon as it's created, we will handle batch submitting that within the reporting cycle so that you don't have to worry about it. And I think that that's the easiest rule of thumb. But per the contractual deliverables, we need it, as soon as that research is closed. Any additional publications that are produced can be sent after the project as well. Okay, so this is how to submit. So the form that Mia mentioned will identify your project, and then it will allow you to select the publication type, and then you can upload it as a PDF. For anything that is not a PDF or not able to be put into a PDF form, please go ahead and send the digital file or link directly to cgrant@tmu.edu with the subject line digital publication somewhere in there. And so that would be something like a software or database link. You can't really PDF an entire database. So we understand that, and we will work with you to get it into the correct format to get it recorded in the library. Next. So there are two places where we archive our publications. That's the NOAA Institutional Repository. So there's a direct link to the library online. Sometimes they can get a little backlogged and they might take a few months to upload it. So we also immediately post it on our internal or local publications list, which is on our Sea Grant website. So you'll be able to access that. Both of them will include the citation and a link to the visual document if we are able. So I guess, this kind of repeats what we were talking about earlier, but for copyright protected publications such as peer reviewed journals, please send the accepted manuscript because it is public access. So that's the most important part, is that the public is able to access it free of charge. Next. All right, thesis and dissertation, so completed by students. I mentioned this a little earlier, but we would love to hear this work too. We think it's awesome. We love to support our student opportunities, but we will embargo for up to 2 years. So as long as there's an embargo date listed on the thesis or dissertation attached to the research, then we're able to hold that so that the research can complete or that student can finish their work before it is publicly available. Okay, so I just want to kind of build on what Chris was talking about. Extension is a huge part of Texas Sea Grant's role. And so we want to really get your work out into the world for the benefit of coastal communities. So we're taking, research and we're really applying your impact and your work out in the field. And so we do this through the extension team. And with the extension team, we want to showcase your impact across Texas coastal communities, and just really kind of drive that interest so that we can continue to fund your work. And if there's anything else that results from it, we want to support that as well. So a couple of the examples that we have on how we might do that are on the next few pages. Yeah, if you'll move forward. So our Texas Shores Magazine is a research extension and education publication that we've been doing for a very long time, I think almost over 40 years now. So this will go out annually, and we try to communicate research results within this magazine. So if you're not subscribed, please head over to our website and subscribe to get a copy, because you might see your work there. You like that little pitch. But it's an example of what an article might look like. The communications team would just reach out to you and say, hey, do you have any progress updates on your work? Or if we got a publication submitted and we want to deep dive into that work for a public audience, then we might reach out to you. But this is what that could look like. Next. Press releases and web stories. So we work closely with Texas A&M University Marketing. We work with media partners in the various communities, kind of depending on the subject and content of your research project. And so we might communicate with something really groundbreaking with them, or if you're looking for a source of funding, like we have a project right now that we are working with the researcher on trying to identify new partners so that they can continue. That might be something that we are willing to do. So always keep that in mind, that we have media relationships that are at your disposal as well. And then social media, this one's easy, but I just wanted to show a couple of the posts that we might do. There's a physical model that we were promoting with our extension team in one of these shots. Here's a news release that we did on our Facebook page, and then our resilient specialist out in the field doing some field work with a research project. So just one more little thing. So any photos and videos, if your research project entails that, we are welcoming that media coverage. So if someone else has approached you about an article and you think it's newsworthy, please send it to us. We're happy to hear about it. We're happy to circulate it as well. And then any project updates along the way. And then there's my contact information. Please save it. I'm here to answer any questions or kind of help you navigate the publications process. And then do you have any questions?
Hello there. I do have a quick question. Could you elaborate a little bit more about like the embargo on the dissertations, and because we plan to have like students as well. So can you elaborate a little bit more?
Well, I know I can maybe give an initial answer. Sorry, maybe.
Yeah, sorry, I was going back to that slide on my version.
So just like A&M Oak Trust honors the embargo date, the National Sea Grant Library does as well, and will only publish the abstract until the embargo expires, and then it will automatically release the entire document.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, regular thing.
And I believe it's 2 years. That's what I was trying to go back and look at my notes.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah, just regular.
Okay, I think we're good. Does anybody else have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat.
Actually, there was one question from Dr. Seaman wondering when we can begin talking publicly. So with that last email where we're hoping to get our funds by the end of March, we're looking to maybe in mid to close to the end of March release that these projects have been recommended for funding. And so at that point, when you see our publications release, you'll be able to do the same. Laura, did you want to say anything? Okay.
No, just, when we're planning to make that release, we can certainly share that around with all the PIs so that they're aware that the release is going out. Unfortunately, as we've all experienced with a lot of the challenges of the federal climate at the moment, a lot of things are requiring extra levels of approval. And so even though we've gotten through 99% of the hurdles, there is still one final remaining approval that has to happen in DC before we're allowed to share the information publicly. And that's tied to that release of funds that comes to us so that we can initiate your awards. So I know it's frustrating to know about these awards for as long as we've known about them, and we're all excited about wanting to get them started and get them rolling and to get them talked about. But we will certainly let you know as soon as you can hit send on announcing to the world.
On that aspect, I have one more question. Can we already start with the outreach work on the ground, because we have the starting date of 2nd of February, right? So is it okay that we already start with the engagement part, although we have no
yes.
official
I mean,
work?
that even the comment of in the director's notification of award letter that was sent out to you all last fall, we had that clause to start your interim account requests with your institution, and then you can also then consider your start dates of this month, February 1, that you could start doing what you need to do to start working on your project.
So yeah, my question is, we're going to go with engagement, we're going to go kind of public, right? So that is where I'm a little bit in, or where you're probably a
That's
little
where
bit
you would need to hold off a little bit until we make our announcement.
Okay, so we cannot schedule workshops.
We're all in this together with what the federal government and what the OMB is doing or not doing with direction of the Department of Commerce. So we just have to wait until we're given that green light that we're getting, that the funding is on its way. And as soon as we find that out, we will let you all know. And Laura,
Yeah, I was gonna say we can talk offline about it.
Okay.
And decide if there's a way to word it so that you can at least get rolling on starting to like schedule the workshops and whatnot, but it's not necessarily fully exposing like, hey, it's this funding under this award. If it's a generalized like, hey, we're collecting information on speckled trout and we really want people to show up and give us feedback. And then by the time that meeting happens, we can say, hey, this is a part of this grant, this award. Like there's probably some ways to word it and work around it so you can at least get rolling on some things without sort of revealing the award and publicly communicating that. So I think we can work through that.
And even our announcement, we would be using that it's been recommended for funding, not that it's been awarded. So we can even have our announcement with that kind of verbiage. So you might keep that in mind with what Laura's saying.
Okay, perfect. But now I have clarification. Thank you so much.
Sure.
For that, Mia and Laura. It's great.
Sorry, I did have a quick question.
Hi, Dr. Quigg.
Apologies. With regards to the publications, if it's a scientific publication for a journal and it's not going into an open access journal, you're asking us to send you the final author's accepted version, right? Showing the track changes and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of times those accepted versions, if you're lucky enough to get back from the publisher, has a watermark of accepted version on it, and it has the numbering and in a Word doc. Or
Okay.
It's not a real
who sees those versions of the paper? I'm asking because, a lot of times the track changes are minimal, right? Little dot this I, cross this T. Sometimes, especially with student papers, it can be substantial.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily, as scientists, want those to become publicly available. We would prefer the final published version to become available.
Yeah, and we have the same issues even with some of our civil engineers that we've funded, because of their exact mathematical equations. If they're not quite exact yet, and they've had those same concerns, but it's just, and Megan can talk a little bit further, but it's just over 2 or 3 years ago where the National Library and NOAA, we're restricted with those copyright restrictions. It has to rest with the original author and not the publisher if it's not open access, which means, it's not going to be a real pretty document, but that's just
Well,
what we've been having to go with. Megan, do you have any other thoughts?
Yes, I was going to say you can apply the track. I'm not asking for like the tracked edit changes. It's if you've made those changes
Mhm.
and cited who made those changes or suggested those changes. And there might be a question if it's a really large change, but those minor ones you're talking about is not a concern. You apply those changes. It's before you submit it to the publication. So whatever
so
you
the
would have.
clean,
The
yeah,
cleaner version.
the clean
But it
version.
needs to
Yeah.
reference who peer reviewed it.
Your final version of that
Yes.
reviewed.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times you can submit a clean copy and a copy with track changes. So if we could submit the clean copy, then that
Yes.
makes me feel comfortable.
Just the clean copy, as long as it is referenced well that somebody peer reviewed it and those edits were made. That is what they're
Okay.
looking for. They want not the specific changes tracked, but like that it was touched by multiple people. Like we need to keep track of that. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
It does.
Yes.
It does.
So
All right. Thank you.
that final clean version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, anything else? If not, just email us with any questions. And as soon as we hear about the next announcement of funding on its way, we will let you know. So thank you so much for attending this lengthy webinar, and have a great day and great
Thanks,
weekend.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.